time now for our Friday feature movie spotlight, where we review some of the latest releases at the Korean box office and online. And we do that with the help of our film critics, who we have with us here in the studio now. First, we have Jason Bechervaise. Jason, hello.
Hi, Jane.
And we have Darcy Paquet with us as well. Darcy, hello to you too.
Hi, good to be here.
Okay, so we're looking at a couple of less high-profile films this week, one international and one local. Actually, the big release this week was the new Transformers movie, right, Jason?
Yep. Darcy and I were basically discussing, which films we should cover, and we both just agreed that we really didn't want to cover the Transformers film.
I don't think we need to. People know.
Yeah, I mean, it just seemed less interesting, so we went with another movie.
Sure. Yes, and these two releases do look very interesting, so I'm sure our listeners will forgive you this time.
Yes.
Okay, let's start with the international Hollywood release. It's a horror film called The Boogeyman, or simply Boogeyman in Korean. It's now playing in Korean theatres. Jason, can you start us off? I believe this is based on a short story by Stephen King, right?
Yeah, there's just so many novels and short stories when it comes to Stephen King. So yeah, this is the latest adaptation of a Stephen King story. Of course, you've got The Shining, It, Carrie, The Shawshank Redemption, countless others. This particular story was first published in 1973. It's directed by the British filmmaker Rob Savage, who's made a couple of movies, Host and Dashcam. The story's pretty simple. It follows a high school student and her younger sister who are coming to terms with the death of their mother, who was killed in a car crash, and it happened so suddenly, and they're not really getting much in the way of support from their father, who's a therapist and clearly struggling. And then a patient turns up on the doorstep, quite literally, seeking help. But he brings in an unwelcome guest and causes havoc. And the film was initially cancelled following Disney's acquisition of Fox, but came back to life in 2021. Originally planned, interestingly, as a streaming release. It was going to be released on Hulu, but later secured a theatrical release, which I think underscores the interesting kind of ecosystem right now, because Disney has realised that streaming platforms are not really profitable. In fact, they've made a loss of $1.5 billion. It may become profitable later, but actually it's a better strategy to release films in cinemas. Other studios are realising this too. Warner Brothers, of course, that did Day and Date for 2021 and abandoned that in 2022. Right,
so this film has significance because of what it tells us about the wider film industry then, and the streaming market, and that's interesting. Okay, Darcy, let's get straight into it. What do you make of the film?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Monster in the Closet is kind of the basic concept that this movie is built around. I would describe it as a not bad horror film. It does the basic job of kind of jump scares and, creating an atmosphere in which to scare the audience. I kept wanting to tell the family, the protagonists in this film, to buy some light bulbs and some proper light fixtures, because they seem to live in a state of permanent darkness. And but yeah, I mean that. I have great admiration for Stephen King. I think that what he's accomplished as a writer is really impressive. And I think what he does is he creates an interesting concept. And then on top of that, he, puts these characters in these situations and, and kind of shows us something about human psychology at the same time.
Sure. And
what this movie does is it's kind of effective enough with the concept, and it keeps your interest. The characters themselves, they're kind of defined by their situation, because it's a family originally of 4, and then the mother dies in an accident. And every time we see one of the characters, they're basically dealing with the loss of the mother, but we don't really see anything else about their personalities beyond their situation. And from what I know of the original story, I think that the characters in the original story were a little bit more quirky and interesting. So, one-dimensional, but I don't know, not bad, I think.
So I think the phrase used, effective enough, I think perhaps sums up what you might have thought of the film. Jason, what about you?
Yeah, it's certainly got very strong production values. You know, this is a Hollywood studio horror flick, and looks like one. You know, the scares are pretty effective. The cinematography is you know, is great, and it's certainly very well acted. So you can't really criticize the film in terms of its production values, but yeah, it's very, very conventional. It relies very heavily on established conventions, and you know when the scares are coming, and you know where it's all heading, and it literally is very, very predictable. But that doesn't mean that it's a bad film. It's not at all. It's just yeah, it's formulaic. It's generic. It's nothing more than that. And you know, they're playing it safe. And certainly, I can see that there will be appeal for this film. Certainly in North America, where horror films are doing pretty well. So. Yeah, I mean, I was a little bit disappointed when I saw some of the reviews, because actually one of the reasons they released this film was because the test screenings were received quite well. But yeah, I think the reviews are pretty spot on, at least the ones I read anyway, just, you know, saying, yeah, it's fine, but it doesn't really do anything new, and it doesn't attempt to, you know, it's unashamedly just, yeah, your pretty average Hollywood fare. That doesn't mean it's bad, but it doesn't mean it's great either.
Okay, so nothing groundbreaking, but right. Not bad still. Okay.
Yeah, I could hear people behind me in the theater reacting to it strongly. So, you know, I think it does work with an audience. It's just, yeah, it's what you expect.
Yeah, and perhaps it's a film that does help watching it with an audience, I think, in a theatre. So perhaps that decision to release it in theatres rather than streaming is perhaps a good one for the fans of the genre who want to see something like this.
Yeah, sure. I can certainly see younger audiences, and younger audiences still want to go to the cinema. And you know, films like Scream, Smile, you know, they were enormously popular amongst, you know, teens and those in their 20s, and this is a key demographic for that film. But yeah, Busan is around the corner, so for those in Korea, this feels like a kind of Busan warm-up for me. So which, you know, I'm talking about the fantastic film festival in Busan, which is very much a genre film festival. And as I was watching the movie, I was like, yeah, this is a good warm-up session. So yeah, it hits all the right notes, but you know, it doesn't break any new ground.
Okay, so that was The Boogeyman. Let's turn to our next film. It's a Korean independent film. It's called Drymphallus, and it has the same name in Korean. It deals with a very topical issue in Korea indeed, and that is the world of real estate and new apartments. So Darcy, can you tell us more?
Yes, the title refers to the name of an apartment complex, and it's a bit of an ironic title, I guess you might say. But the main character is named Hae-jung. She's played by Kim Sun-young, who is a supremely talented actress who I think most viewers would recognize her face. And, you know, she's just bought one of these apartments. She discovers that when she turns on the tap that, you know, rusty water keeps flowing out, and there seems to be a problem right from day one. But when she goes to try to get it addressed, then it turns out to be much more complicated. And, you know, she's learning that the company that, you know, is selling these apartments is maybe a bit shady in some ways. And then, you know, on top of that, I mean, she is coming out of a really complicated and difficult situation where her husband had been in an accident involved, you know, at his workplace, and where there was this really extended standoff between the company and then the victims, like the families of these victims. I mean, sort of a labor dispute, but, you know, really kind of entrenched. And she's decided to accept a settlement and come out of that in order to move into this apartment. But in doing that, some of the other former colleagues feel betrayed by her decision. So it's a heavy setup. It's a, you know, she's in a hard situation, and all these various kind of pressures are put on her. You know, there's another widow who she tries to help out, but that, you know, that situation gets complicated as well. It's a feature debut. The director is named Ka Sung-moon, and it premiered at the Busan Film Festival last year, and it's just opened in theaters now. Yeah, and then Kim Sun-young, the actress, did win an award at the Asian Film Festival in Rome in April. She won Best Actress there.
Right, for this film.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Jason, what did you think? And also, we've talked previously about how Korean indie films, they can often be grueling to watch as they try to tackle difficult and sometimes complex issues facing society. And this film, it sounds like it falls in that category as well.
It does, and Darcy mentioned it's pretty heavy, which it is. But at the same time, certainly first half of the film, I think Tony is quite interesting because you have this kind of within this apartment block, you have those who live there, residents, and they've kind of come together to try and help each other. But they're a little bit weird and a little bit crazy, actually, especially the leader of this group. And it's a little bit absurd, but it's, I guess, quite funny. And so what I'm noticing over the last couple of years when it comes to Korean independent films dealing and tackling these very difficult issues, they're doing it a little bit differently. They're doing it through humor. And there was a wild rumor in Busan last year. There's also Persona, Strange Girl, and From You at Jeonju earlier on this year.
Yeah, this is something we've talked about before. I think,
So some of them are still quite grim, but also they're quite comical. And I think this kind of falls into that category. So in the second half of the film, it gets pretty depressing and heavy going and a bit contrived. But that being said, though, I think tonally it's quite interesting, and real estate is such a big issue in Korea, and new apartments, and I think a lot of people not necessarily can relate to this particular experience. It does seem rather absurd, but that being said, though, there are problems with apartments and just trying getting onto the housing ladder, and so I think it will speak to audiences, and the performances are solid. It also stars Chae Min-young, who's pretty popular right now. He's in like a Netflix series, and he speaks fluent English and Korean, and so it's interesting to watch him in this film. And so well performed, a little bit contrived. I don't know if Darcy agrees with me on that, but as the film kind of came close to the conclusion, I was like, I'm not quite sure I can really believe all this, but
but still, it's an effective enough drama.
It is effective, and I like the kind of the relationships the characters have with each other, and some of the the conflicts that arise is quite effective.
And Darcy, what do you make of the film, and also how it addresses this issue?
Yeah, I mean, I think the film kind of presents Korean society as this fundamentally predatory place where you have winners and losers, and then it also seems to show how, I mean, the victims or the people who lose out are kind of destined to fight with each other just as much as they are to try to fight back against the people who are taking advantage of them. And so in that sense, it is a pretty heavy theme, and I did have my heart kind of felt struggled through much of the film, but it is very memorable. I think it's well done. I mean, Kim Sun-young is a formidable actress, and so if you have the strength for this very downbeat kind of message, I think it's a worthy film.
Okay, so that's Dream Palace, and that's it for this week. Darcy, Jason, thank you for your reviews, and we'll catch up with you again next time.
Take care.
Yeah, see you later.